Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Andy, and I have Mark with me. And I think we pretty much got a full attendance, other than Sridhar, that hopefully will be along shortly.
Hi, Andy.
Yeah, good morning, George. Morning, Elang. I see that your microphones are coming on now, which is good. How's everything in Asia?
It's good. It's good.
Morning, Bill. Good, good. Well, look, I'm going to suggest we make a start on the session. And as always, I'll be recording this session. So if you need to reflect on it afterwards, we can do so. Yeah, let's just get into the session and we can feed Sridhar in as and when he arrives. So, look, first of all, let me welcome you to the second session. This is when really we're going to get started on the more formal app building side. And what I thought I'd do is run through our formal agenda first of all, just pick up on what we covered last time to see if there are any open items, and then we'll get straight into the app building process. So the agenda for this session, which will last up to 2 hours, is first of all, we're now going to get you onto the system and enable you to access App Studio and to actually start building an application. And for the purpose of the training sessions, we're all going to be building the same application. It's going to be a risk register, and we're going to do that in two parts. We're going to build a basic risk register, and then we're going to build a more complex one. We're going to walk you through the configuration elements, and you'll see that, in fact, as we go through the 8-step app build process, we'll do it in several hits. So we'll do it as a basic builder, first of all. So we'll cover off some of the basic fields, and then we'll come back to some of the more advanced fields in sessions 3 and 4. Then Mark's going to pick up. So Mark Dyer, who's our lead application developer. So in the future, as you get have questions about app build and need some technical advice, then Mark Dyer will be your first port of call. And Mark's going to be running you through the different fields, the different field types, and some of the different parameters, for example, like setting mandatory fields and what have you. And that's all about getting data into the application. So what data do we need to capture, and what order do we need to capture it in? The templates and forms are all about laying information out on the screen, whether or not it's a PC or a tablet or a smartphone. But once we've got the fields, we need to lay them out in an attractive format. So fields sit within templates and templates sit within forms. And then to complete the application, we need to get the information out. And that's going to be in the form of reports and charts and dashboards. But for today, we're just going to focus on a simple list report. And in terms of the app build process, we normally finish with publishing. Publishing is all about setting security. So who can see the records, who can see the application. But today you'll find we're going to switch that order around, and we're going to ask you to publish your app very early on so that we can then see from our end what you're doing and how you're progressing. And then last but not least, we having built a simple risk register, a simple application, we're then going to add and save a record, and that will be the first proof that our application is working. So over the next 2 hours, we will build a complete application from start to finish and publish it, albeit in a very simple format. So that's our proposed agenda. But before we get into that, let me just reflect back on some of the outputs from last session, and just to see if anybody has any particular questions or concerns. So four interim actions that we had from the last session. One was to just make sure that you can block the time out for the webinars and the interim work. And I know one or two of you have got question marks over other commitments, and we'll pick them up in other ways. So if you're not able to make a session, then you'll be able to view the online resource, and also we can pick up in terms of one-on-one as required. I see you've all logged into the Apps Incubator and you've self-registered, so that's great. So I'll be asking you in a second for any questions you have over some of the applications that you've seen there. The support environment, we're going to be pointing you to this all the time. So support.softools.net. Everything we covered today in the session should be on that site, and you'll be able to get to that in a number of different ways, either logging directly into that or from the site itself. And last but not least, it's just hopefully you'll all have had a chance to look at some of the current applications that you or your client is using at the moment that are running in Excel or Microsoft Word. And that will give you an idea of the type of application that you might want to build as we go through this program on your own sites or after the program once we've finished. And specifically, what your current risk register or issues log is, and then we can see how that compares with the generic one we're going to be building. So that was the pre-work before this session. And before we start with the app build process, are there any questions, concerns? What open items are there that we should just pick up on before we move on to this session too?
Yeah. Andy, are you sharing your screen at the moment?
Well, Bill, I am now. Yes, thank you.
I thought it was just me. Oh, there, right. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Okay. What other questions? Anybody got any questions or concerns about logging into either the site itself, viewing the applications, finding the support area, or identifying Excel or Word-based applications you might want to build in the next few months?
Hi, Andy Alaric here.
Hi, Alaric.
Yep, hi. It's a simple question, but maybe it's simple for you, but I just was struggling a little bit with this. When I'm on the Apps Incubator page, when I click on the gears of the cog, there's an option for me to get to the App Studio. But once I'm there, I can't seem to jump back to my Launchpad. The Launchpad looks quite different from the rest. Is that normal, or I find that I have to kind of like backtrack a little bit more to get the same Launchpad up?
Okay, well, look, let's just have a look at that. So when you're in the application itself, so when you're on this screen here, you then click on the cogs in order to get to App Studio.
Yes.
Now, when you click on App Studio, it will in fact open in a separate tab. So, and I've already opened mine here. So clicking on App Studio will open up a screen that looks like this. And you'll see that there are two tabs now open at the top. Now, in this case here, if I go to my applications, it will actually give me all the same applications that I have access to. Again, it depends on visibility, but I should have access to these. But you'll probably find that a number of the applications won't be visible to you because they're locked down to a particular app builder. So, for example, a lot of the apps that we will put onto the Apps Incubator will be controlled by Softools people, so that during this particular workshop, then those are effectively locked down and can't be changed. Now, and this is where we're going to start this morning. We'll start off, and you'll actually be starting by building a new application by clicking on the Add Application just shortly. But it is in a separate tab, but everything you make, all the changes you make in this particular tab, so the Apps Incubator /App Studio, will apply to the site that users will be working on.
Okay, so it's a different Launchpad when I'm in the App Studio page as well as when I'm in the Welcome page. It's a totally different Launchpad, right?
Yes, correct. I mean, they're both pointing at the same underlying site, but you will see different applications based on security. And we've set up the applications to show you on the site, so the Apps Incubator site. We've set these up so that you can see them, but you can see them as guests, so they're read-only format. But in the Launchpad here, then the applications are only editable by Softools team.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, any other questions before we make a start? Okay, great. Well, look, let me just, we get straight into it then. And I'm going to be moving between the PowerPoint slides here and the live application as we go. And to start off with, I'm just going to run through some of the basics and to give you an overview in terms of how the applications are structured. And then we'll move on to the live site. Okay, so first of all, just a quick talk through of the app build process. And this is, I'm still on the PowerPoint, but this is reflected on the App Studio application. There are 8 steps that we follow. The first is just to configure the application. Now, in this area here, we'll be adding a name and a description for the application, but we'll also be adding things like the icon that the users will see, who the publisher is, and some basic information about things like certain fields that might have be treated in different ways. So really, that's just to get us up and running fairly quickly. It's a title, it's a description, and it's whether or not there is help information available to the users. The second area is all about getting information into the system, and this is using fields. These are input data fields. So what information do you want to capture? What format do you want to capture them in? Are there certain parameters associated with each of those? So is it going to be a date lookup field? Is it going to be a selection field? Or is it going to be an image, or is it text or a long text? And again, Mark will pick that up shortly just to talk you through the different field types, and we'll start to build those into our application. Then we lay the fields out in templates, and this is really how do we group the fields on the screen in a logical, sensible order, and then how do we lay the templates out in forms. Now, a simple application like a risk register will probably only have one form, but if you're building a complex app, which is a multi-stage and gate process, then it may be you have a separate form for each of those different stages and gates. The next natural stage is to get information out in the form of reports. And when we use the word report, that could reflect a list of the different risks or records. It could reflect a chart, a bar chart, a control chart, a bubble chart, or it could also reflect a dashboard, so multiple charts running on a single screen. So again, as you're starting to think about your own applications, it's about thinking about what information do we need to capture, how do we need to lay it out in a natural way as for the user, but then also how do we get information out. We've then got 2 more slightly more complicated parts of the process, and often these are not put in place with the initial app build. One is all about workflow. So workflow is the thing that drives the way in which people will work with an application and the way in which information may flow. So for example, workflow may be set up on the application. So if a risk turns status red, then we want the system to automatically send an email to the executive sponsor. So workflow is quite sophisticated, and it starts to bring the application to life. But often we build applications without workflow, and then we add it as we get closer to the implementation. Integration is then about linking applications together. For example, if we're going to have a program governance solution, we may have a program KPI application. We may have program projects application, and also a risk application. And we might want to link those 3 applications together. So we might set up KPIs. Within each KPI on the program, we have a series of linked projects. And then for each of the projects, we might have a series of linked risks. But integration in session 4 will also cover off talking about how we can integrate with client systems such as enterprise solutions or even smart devices as part of what's being termed the Internet of Things. But when we get into integration with legacy systems or enterprise systems, that's typically where you would stop and you would give us a call, and one of our technical team would get involved. And last but not least, once you're happy with the application, you then decide who should have access to that application, and that's about setting security in the publish area. So that's really just a quick overview of the 8-step process. Are there any quick questions or concerns around that? Okay, let me just elaborate then. Just the next couple of slides just help to clarify how these different building blocks work. So an application consists of input data fields where we capture data, and data can either be put in manually or via CSV routines of our APIs. These fields sit within templates, and then the templates sit within forms. And again, that will become clearer as you look at the applications on the Apps Incubator site, you'll see various applications and you'll recognize the fields, templates, and forms layout. Once we've done that, as we start to use the application, then every time we create a new instance of a risk, for example, we refer to that as a record. So that's about capturing data. Once we've got the data, then we can see that information in the form of reports or charts. And we'll also refer to applications, which are found under the Launchpad. And depending on your security, depending on the site you're on, will determine which applications you see, which applications you can actually use, and which you can actually just use in read-only format. So that's just a quick overview of some of the terminology. So let's now get into building our first application. On this slide here, you can see the process we're going to follow. We're going to log in, access the App Studio. We're going to create an application, and then we're going to ask you to publish it. Now, normally publishing comes later, but by asking you to publish it here, it means that we can see it and we can then see how you're getting on and provide some coaching support. We'll put some basic information in terms of configuration, and then we will start to add the fields. And you'll see here there are going to be 6 fields we're going to ask you to add as part of the basic risk register. So a title and description, a type, so a classification of the risk, status in terms of red, amber, green, blue, and black, and we'll explain those a little bit later, the dates by which the risk needs to be resolved, and the owner or the person responsible for this particular risk. And you'll see each of those fields is a different field type. So this will get us used to not only creating fields, but also defining different field types. We'll then lay those out in terms of the templates and forms and create a simple list report. Okay, so that's where we're going in the next hour or so. So look, let's just make a quick start on that. And as before, again, please feel free to ask any questions at any point in time as we go along. So the first thing we're going to do is let me ask you now to log into the application. So log into appsincubator.on.softools.net. That will take you through to this page here. And once you're in that page there, now behind the cogs menu in the top right-hand corner, you will see that you've got an extended list of controls. The control that we're going to be using now is the App Studio. So if you then click on App Studio, and that will take you through to a screen that looks like this. Now, can I just I'll just constantly seek feedback in case anybody is not able to see this, but if anybody cannot see this screen, please feel free to say so now, and then we'll see what the issue is there. But again, if you're not able to see things that I can see, just ask at any point in time. But the chances are the difference will be directly related to the security of the permissions that I have. So let me talk you through the App Studio screen here. So on the App Studio screen, we just have a welcome page on the right-hand side. And you'll see that there are, in fact, a couple of useful links at the bottom here in terms of links through to the support area. On the left-hand side, you'll see that we have some information that will tell you about the statistics on this particular site, so on the Apps Incubator site. But then you'll see 3 elements that you'll be getting into in session 4. One is how do we change this home page, and how can we make it more sophisticated, perhaps in the form of adding a dashboard. And a dashboard is multiple charts or reports running on a single screen. And that can either be within an application, so it applies to a dashboard, for example, just for the risk register, or a dashboard for the overall site. And this is particularly important for the executives, because executives want that visibility and control, whereas users often want to drill down into the record itself and actually work on the detail. And templated reports, this is about exporting information into Microsoft Word. So getting information out from a single record, a single application, or multiple applications into a pre-formatted Word document. And again, we'll pick that up on session 4. So these are slightly more advanced features we'll come back to, but for the moment, let me ask you to click on your Launchpad, And you won't see all of these applications here. But if you click on the Launchpad, you'll see a plus button there at the top of your screen. And if you can just click on that and now add a title and description for your application. Now, for your title, let me ask you to put your name, so your surname or last name as the title. And it might be, for example, the Swinbank risk register, so that we know which application belongs to which person.
I've got a basic question here, Andy.
Yeah.
Andy, I've got a basic question. Are you on App Studio as we do this, or are you on the Incubator homepage?
No, I'm on the App Studio now. So you'll see at the top of my screen there are two different tabs. What we're doing now, everything we're doing now is in App Studio. And you can see that we're in App Studio. We've got the same site open, but it's /App Studio.
Yeah. Just tell me, give me the instruction again. So once I'm in there, which I am in there, what do you want me to do?
So if you're in App Studio, Bill, at the top of your screen now, if you click on the Launchpad,
yeah,
and you'll see that at the top of the screen there, you've got a plus button that says Add App.
Yep. Click on that.
Okay.
Yep.
If you click on that, it opens up on the right-hand side.
Thank you.
Okay, and then so just add a title. Now, throughout the building of an application, you'll see that the system asks for an identifier. Now, the identifier is the system name that it will give whatever application you have. And an identifier is typically the same as the title, but without any of the gaps. And you'll see the system will automatically take something like a risk register. And as we enter that information, the system will automatically create the identifier by simply removing the gap. So whether or not it's an application, a field, or a report, you will give it a title that the system will then suggest an identifier. Now, once the identifier has been set, that cannot be changed because that's something the system will use within the database. Now, before you leave this screen, let me ask you to create a full description. Again, the description will be available and will be seen by users. And so it should help them to understand what the risk, what this application is all about, and how they will be using it. And once you've completed that information, just then use the tick button in the top right-hand corner to then save your work. And that will automatically create this new application in the database, and it'll be ready for us to work on. And it will take you through to the configuration page of your application. So let me just give you another few seconds for that, just to add your risk register. So you should now all be looking at a screen that looks like this. Again, you'll have the name of your application in the top left. And then down the left-hand side, we have the overview slide and then our rate build process. Now, whilst we're going through this, just to point out that later in the year, so by the end of the year, we will have the next version of the App Studio will become live. And you'll see that it will work slightly differently, where the fields, the templates, and the forms will be using much more of a drag and drop approach, so it'll be much more dynamic. But that won't come out until the end of the year, and when it does, again, we'll send out information and give you plenty of warning in terms of when that's coming and how that's going to work.
Hi, Andy. How do I get the icon? Change the icon there in the overview page?
Okay, well, I'll come on and talk. I'll tell you about that in just a second. So at the moment, if you're just on the overview, you probably don't have an icon here at all. So 100% of what you see, we will cover on the program, and we'll tell you how to change all this. But essentially, changing that icon, we will do under the Configure tab, and we'll do that in just a second. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you to jump to the end. I'm going to ask you to click on the Publish tab here. Now, the reason we're doing this is because we're running this as a training program. At the moment, Mark and I cannot see your application, so we can't see yet what you're doing. So let me ask you to click on the Publish page here, and you'll see that by default, your application will be hidden. So if you change this now, so if you unhide it, and if you could have visibility by team, and you could give that to Softools, and in fact, if you're happy to share your work with others on the program, then let me ask you to hold down the control button and click the guest as well. And then under default record access, again, you can set this up however you want. So in the publish area, we're effectively setting security for the application. Who do you want to be able to see the application? And you can specify by group and individual. And as people start to create records, who should have the default record access? And last but not least, if you could then also under app edit access, if you could click on Softools, but don't click on guest. So just click on Softools, but make sure that also that your own name is ticked on the right hand side as well. So this determines who is actually able to edit the application. Now this area here explains, for example, under this application, risk 1, why you are able to see it in the normal application, but you're not able to see it in App Studio because I haven't given you visibility or control to be able to edit any of the generic apps we use for the training program. Again, once you've set this up, then if you can tick on the security in the top right-hand corner there, so tick on the tick, and that will automatically save your work. Now, again, one of the changes that will come in a few months' time is that the tick will disappear. And the tick will disappear because your work will be automatically saved. And that's, in fact, the same in the live application. So web solutions now are moving to the point where data is automatically saved as users enter it into the system. But for the moment, every time we make a change, we'll just use the tick button to save our work. And then Mark will hopefully be able to log in. And whilst I cover off the next section, Mark can then just log in and just have a look at your different applications.
Andy, I'm running behind you again. I was actually editing, putting the commentary in my description. Okay. And I missed some of the screen that you went from. So you went presumably into App Studio again. And how do I get the field that gets me to publish and look at the permissions? And how do I get it?
So Bill, once you'd entered your description, you clicked on the tick button in the top right-hand corner, did you?
I'm just doing that now.
Okay.
Because it was a long description, right?
That will take.
So now it should.
Yeah, that will take you through to your application. And that should then you should look at it. You should be seeing a screen. Which
yeah, I've got it now.
Okay.
I click on publish, do I?
Yep. If you just go down to publish on the left-hand side there, and then if you could, so untick the hidden button there.
Yeah.
And then have visibility by team, and make sure that Softools. In fact, I think you may as well put Softools and guest. Click on both of those.
Yeah. And the next one is just guest, was it?
No, so default record access, well, that's up to you. So again, you could put, you could lay it out like this. So guests have read-only format, but Softools have full access. Obviously, if this is a live client scenario, then you would have different teams within the client. You would set up permissions in the appropriate way. So some users, you want to have read-only access to records, so they can see the work, but they can't edit it. Other users, you want to have full access so they can edit it as well. And then down at the bottom here, Bill, under App Edit Access, if you just click on Softools, but make sure that under Editable by User, you also have your own name ticked as well. And that way we can not only see the applications you're building, but then we can help to help with coaching and reconfiguring your applications.
Okay, well, I tick and save it.
Yes, that's correct. And then let me ask you, let's just go back up to the top in terms of the overview. So let me ask you now to click on the overview tab. And on the overview tab, what you'll see it's giving us is a quick summary of where we are on our application. So because this is a completed application, I have an icon for my risk. So I've got the icon that appears on the launch pad. We have a title description. We have green buttons all the way down the right-hand side. And we might also have an icon that says who the publisher is. And the default here, obviously, is Softools. So really, the first tab here is just a quick check to see whether or not our app is ready to publish, what state it's in. But for the moment, let me now just ask you to click on the Configure tab on the left-hand side. And we're just going to pick up on some of these fields here. So we're not going to be doing them all, but we're going to do some. And then I'm going to hand over to Mark to help you to add fields to your application. So if you could all click on the Configure tab on the left-hand side here, and you'll see straight away that we have title at the top here, and we have an identifier. Now, the identifier is in gray, and we can see that we can't edit that. But if you do want to make a change to the title of your application, you can do so, and you can do so at any point in time. So just come back to the Configure area, change the title, update the description, and click on the tick button, and that will update everything for you. Now, there's a few more advanced features we'll come back to. For example, this icon on the right-hand side allows us to create an alternative language version. So if we want to have the application where the titles are going to be converted into perhaps Chinese and Malay in a particular region, so based on the user profile, then if you add the translation there, then if the user has chosen that language on their profile, then it will automatically translate the application name or the field titles to that local language. Now, let me just run down through some of the other fields here, but again, we won't be spending a lot of time in this section. Category, the category is the name that appears in the grouping here. So if we look at my 21 applications, you'll see we have the name of the application, such as feedback, and then we have resources or control or transformation. So if you've got a site with a large number of applications, then it's worthwhile classifying or giving each of the applications a category. As we do that, you'll see that it does provide a quick search mechanism. And because you've now added a number of apps and you haven't yet categorized them, then I can also see there's an uncategorized apps listing there. And here we can see your applications, and they're all starting to appear, which is great. What else? We have a record type name. So what do we want the records to be called to? And this is used throughout the system. So we have a record, in this case, is a risk. The plural of that is either risks or a risk register. So that's just the single and plural name for the records. Now, the next three fields we'll come back to. One is a record title field. Again, that's used in the system in different areas. We have a record user identifier field. That's an advanced feature which is only used for importing from another system, importing data from another system, and we'll come back to that later. And we have the A to Z search. And again, this is just a quick search mechanism on the list reports, which again, we'll look at later. But Alaric, in answer to your first question, though, how do we change the icon? Now, you'll see here that we have the icon, and this is used for the application. And to change this, we can just click on Upload New Asset. We can find an asset, and we can just drag it and drop it in here, or we can choose it from our hard disk. And that will automatically then appear on the application every time on the springboard or on the launch pad or at different points in the when we're using the solution. So this is where you change the icon that you want to associate with your particular solution. Now, just to help you out, again, what we have about 200 icons that we use. And I've just clicked back now on the Apps Incubator. And if I go into the app that's called Resources, So if you just look at my screen, you'll see I've clicked on the resources application. We do in fact have a number of icons here, and we have a whole load more. So if you'd like us to provide you with the complete 200 application icons, we can do so. But for the purposes of this workshop, again, you can come in here, you can find an application, download it to your computer, and then you can use it as part of building your application. You will also need to add a publisher. So, and you should now see that there are certain fields here which are possibly in red. And if they are in red, it means they're mandatory fields. So you'll need to add the name of the publisher, perhaps the URL directly to your website. And again, we can change the publisher image or asset. At the moment, the default is Softools, but again, you can change that as well. Same for the developer. And then down at the bottom of the screen, again, we're not going to cover these off now. So down at the bottom of the screen, we have something called settings. This is a lookup only application. So this is where you might want to create a second application, which might be a list of companies with details, and it would only be used as a lookup for another application. Now this control is likely to disappear, and it will be covered simply by linking applications together. And then last but not least, on session 3, we will be coming back and showing you how to add help resources to your application. So this isn't typically done up front, but again, as a user starts to use your application, we need to give them information that helps them to understand, how do I complete the risk register? When should I complete the risk register? What does FMEA stand for? So this is where we can add help information, which is all about application or process-based help. So for the moment then, let me just ask you to complete any fields. Just put data in for I think it's the name of the publisher and the name of the developer, and then just save your record at using the tick button. So perhaps add a category, add your risk name singular and risk name plural, and then just save your work. Great. Are there any questions or concerns at this point in time? Bill, how are you getting on there?
I wish I could do this more quickly than I am. I'm on plural of risk, which I make risks. So record title field is the next one.
Okay, great.
Are we going into that, or do you want me to keep going? Or?
No, so you don't need the record title field. Just scroll down the page, Bill. Anything that has a red border is a mandatory field, and you just need to put some data in there and then hit the save button.
When you say red border, am I not seeing the red borders?
Well, it may be that there aren't, but because of course on my screen here I'm not seeing any red borders because I have information in there. But if there are on any form, if you see any field with a red border, then that means it's expecting information, and it won't let you save until that's completed. So
I'm just saying I don't see red borders on mine for some reason, but oh yes, I do now. Publisher, yes, okay.
Yes.
Hi, Andy.
Yes, hi.
I just added the logo and all that, and went back to the overview page upon saving the config file. And in the checklist, I see that there is a red is title field set, and it shows a red color. And when I click that, it takes me to the basic information in config file, but the title exists, so I'm not sure why it is showing red.
The reason is a good question, Sridhar. The title field is used by the system as a default field in certain scenarios. So the system will need it, or it will be helpful for the system to have it. Now, at this point in time, because we haven't actually added any fields, then all of your apps will have that as status red. So this is something where after Mark has helped you to add some fields, we can then come back to the configuration tab, and then you will then be able to add the title field. So at the moment, when you click on record field title, the title field, you won't have anything in that space.
Okay, thank you.
Once we've added the fields, we can come back to that, and then we can correct it.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, anybody else got any questions at this point in time?
Yeah. Hi, Andy. Elric here.
Hi, Eric.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Okay. How do I get to the resource page again, where you can get the icons?
Okay, no problem. So I'm going to leave App Studio. So again, I have two tabs at the top of my page. The one I'm working in is called App Studio. If I now leave that and go back to the App Studio site, and in fact, let me just go back to the home page. So I'm just going to click back on the home page. So if you're looking at my screen, you'll see this is where we land. If I go into the Launchpad, then we have an application that's called Resources. Now, under Resources, you'll see that this is where we're going to be adding everything, all of the presentations. So, for example, the presentation pack from today is under Presentation Basics pack. You'll see further down, we have the information from the last session. So we have the webinar and the pack from the first session, onboarding session. So all the resources for the workshop for the program are here. But you'll also see that under the graphics section, we've added a number of resources. Now, this is really just to give you an idea of types of the images and graphics that we use for the application. But if you open up any one of them, so let's say, for example, for your risk register, you want to use the one that's called risk, then you can see what it looks like. But if you open up that, then you'll see that here we've got the image, and then you can save the image directly to your home page. So directly to your PC, and then you'll be able to use that as your image for your application.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
And we've got 200 of these images, and we find it when we're building a lot of applications quickly, we find it really useful to have a resource library of images. In fact, this image should also appear here on the bottom right as an attachment. But we haven't got that. So we'll make a note of that, and we'll also add it so you can then just either do a right click and then save the image as a PNG file, or you'll be able to go into the attachment area. Okay, and then you'll see, obviously, then we use those images here and they appear in the Launchpad. Okay, what are the questions at this point in time? Great. Okay. Well, look, let me pass you over to Mark.
One quick one, Andy. One quick one, please.
Yes.
See, you mentioned that the category is basically to organize all your apps, right? But on your screen, I see 4-dot control.
Yes.
So I have inputted category as risk. Is that okay, or is there anything that we must be aware of 4-dot control? Is it some control?
No, so this is whatever we want to call it. You'll see that the demonstration applications we put on the Apps Incubator site, there are something like 10 apps that logically fall into 4 different categories. And because this is a governance app, it's in the control stage of a transformation program, for example. So we've just called it 4-dot control. Now, once you've saved your category, then if you want it to appear here, then again, what you might need to do is just to hit the F5 refresh button. and and that will refresh the cache. And so any changes you make in App Studio would then appear on the site. But no, you can put any category you like, and it's relevant where we've got a number of different applications. Where you're only building a single app, then it's not so relevant. And I can see, oh gosh, here we go. So so we start to see the applications building up. So we can see that Alaric here has already found and used the risk triangle here for his application. Jamil has found an excellent icon here from his hard disk. And again, we have a couple of others. So we can start to see the applications now appearing because you've all given me visibility through the publish share of the application.
There's a good icon we have put, Andy, by the way.
Oh, is there? Well, what? Yes, good. Okay, so let me now hand over to Mark, and let's get some fields into our application. Let's start to capture the data.
Hi, everyone. So today what we'll be building is the first version of the risk register. So if I open that one up, we can see what we'll be building. We have the report here. What we'll start with is the entry form. So on here we can see we've got 6 fields there, each different field types. And we've collected that together on the risk profile template on the risk form. So the first stage in App Studio is to click on the Fields folder. And you'll see that this is empty at the moment. To create your first field, click on the plus button. And you'll be taken to the ad screen. Now, the first field we're going to capture here is the risk title. So we give it a label, and the label is what's going to appear beside the field so the user knows what value to put in. When we've entered the label, if we then click away from it, it will auto-generate an identifier. The identifier is fairly important. It needs a logical name because it's used when moving data. It's done via sort of an import-export of data, and in order to get the mappings have to be to the identifier. The user won't see it on the forms. Now for the title, the type of field we're going to choose here is a text field. The text field allows any entry of text. So it's where you've got a different value that the user's entering every time. So in the field type list, select text. Now there's a couple of options here. We've got whether it's a required field and whether it's read-only. Now required means that they will not be able to create or update a risk if there's no value in the field. So the title is one that's likely to be required. So we tick this property and it will make the title required. In terms of how many fields you want to be required, we probably advise limiting that. You need to force the user to enter the minimum amount of data that you need, but if you end up with too many required fields, it can put the user off. So if we keep them to a minimum and keep them very near the start of the form, you'll find that the users are more likely to still sort of create the records. Now, the read-only option isn't used that often. Essentially what it does is grey out the value on the screen so that the user won't be able to input via the screen. It still will take a value if you import to the field. So if you were to take sort of a CSV file and import that, it would still update the value, but they wouldn't be able to edit it on screen. So a common example might be if you had an audit where you were setting what question the user was to answer. You might want that to be read-only. You'd set the value, but then the user wouldn't be able to edit it. And we'll cover expressions and default values on a later session. One parameter we may want to fill in for the title is length. What length does is it sets a character limit for the title. We want them to be short, and then the user will put a more detailed version into the description. So for the title, we might want to just limit that to, say, 50 characters. Now, the only other option that we're going to click on this field is one right at the bottom of the screen called Include in Free Text Quick Filter. By ticking that, what it means is that when we go to the application and we want to search for a record, we can type in part of the title into the search box and it'll pull back if there's a match to the values in this field that we're creating.
Mm-hmm. Mark, can I just stop you there?
Yes.
You're doing quite a lot of things and I'm just following you on the GoToMeeting screen. Are you wanting me to copy you on my App Studio and do exactly the same thing?
Sorry, yes, I should have made that clear. So I've run through the options. If I leave the screen up here, and if everyone wants to replicate that.
Yeah, just bear with me. So we're down to length, 50 characters. That's about it, yeah, is it? And save it or
So
just...
the only other option is the one right down the bottom here of Include in Free Text Quick Filter, so we can search for records by the title.
So we tick that and then save.
Yeah, once that's filled in, again, click the tick in the top right, and that will then save your field.
Okay.
And what it should do is then take you back to this list of fields, and you'll all see one field in there called title.
Yeah.
Has everybody got to that stage, or has anybody not been able to create their first field?
I'm good, thanks.
Right.
Yep, I'm good too.
Thank you. So we've created a first field. We're now going to go through a variety of different sort of field types. And the reason being, it validates the data as the user enters it. So a title is, you can't really limit what they're entering into a title. But if we were to create the date of the risk, we can force it to be a date entry. And because it's a date field, it'll be consistent entry across all records, which then means that when you get to the stage of reporting out, you've got a clean set of data to report on. So our second field, we will create the description. So from this screen again, if you click the plus button, now for this one, we'll demonstrate that the label and identifier don't need to be the same. So in our description, we could have something that's quite meaningful to the user. So add an instruction there that we want the description to be in the format if then. When we get to the identifier, it will suggest this to us, but in fact, what's more meaningful to us is that when we see the data in by the IDs, we'll just need to know that it's the description.
And again, do you just want us to replicate that now?
Yes, if you'd like to. I'll just show you the field type, because that's the only, there's two more options for this field, and then if you'd like to follow afterwards, that might be easier to see the screen as well. So the field type here, we've got a slightly longer area for the user to enter. The description could be several lines of text. So the field type we select is a long text field. And what this creates is a field that's across a number of rows and expandable. But what we can do is set what the default number of rows that are going to appear is. So the default height on this field we can set by filling in the rows property down here. And it might suggest the default value for this, we'll set it to be 4 rows. So if you'd like to replicate that field, and once you've filled that in, again, same process, click the tick and that will add your field. Now you'll notice I'm clicking back. You will need to click the tick to save the fields, but because I'm running through an app where these already exist, I need to go back. Has everybody created the description field? Or does anyone want me to wait for a moment?
Yeah, down to length. I can't remember what you said there.
So on the long text field, there's slightly different properties. And scrolling down the page, you might see one near the bottom called rows.
Yeah, got that, rows, and we put in there what?
I've put probably 3 or 4. We'll set it to 4.
Okay. Yeah.
It gives the height of the box that the user's going to enter into.
And then we saved, eh?
Yes. Now the next field we're going to create is a slightly more complex field. It's going to be a selection field, and that's going to be for the type of risk that we're creating. So to do this, if you click the plus button, that'll bring up the ad screen. And on the ad screen for the title and identifier, if you put those two as type, what we've then got is we're going to make this a selection. So it's going to be a fixed choice from a set of 5 different risk types. To do that, we set the field type to selection. What we then need to do is actually create the options. So besides select list, at the moment, it will likely say select an item. What I'm going to get you to do is create the selection options. So to do that, if you click on the pencil icon just to the right of select list, it should open a property sheet on the right.
Yeah.
And on your screens, what you should see is this. So we're going to create a new select list. We'll need to give it an identifier. Now, it's similar to when we created the app, because we're working on the same site. If you could prefix the identifier with your name. So if I was creating, I'd have Mark type. If you're on your own sites, you'd probably just call it type, or perhaps better, if you've got multiple apps running, you may put the app name first. So you might call it risk type, so you know that the selection list is for that app. The identifier needs to be all letters and no spaces, no special characters. But you can give it a friendlier name for the name. The only place this will appear is when you're selecting the select list. So we're creating one now for this field, but what it'll do is save it globally for the site. So once you've created it once, you could then reuse it. A common example is if you've got a field that denotes the team that a particular record's assigned to. That's relevant across multiple apps, so you could use the same selection list across the apps. So the name for here, I'll create Mark's risk type. Now the options that we're going to use are, mind you bringing up the option?
Sorry, of the field for a new field type. What?
Just the selection options for risk type. The first one we're going to do is people. And what we're doing here is we're entering 3 different options for each selection option. We're entering 3 different things. We're entering the text, the value, and the display order. So the text is the option that's going to appear to the user when they're on the field. The value is what's actually going to be stored on the field. The difference being, one's what value you actually want, and one's it's slightly easier for the user to make a selection. Probably what's best is to give an example where they wouldn't match. So you may have a field that's showing the impact, and that may be on a rating of 1 to 5. Now the user doesn't know what 1 to 5 is, if 1's high, if 5's high. So what you do is have the values as being 1 to 5, but then the text as being low, medium, high. And that way they can select what they know, and you've still got the value that you want. The display order is the order that it's going to appear in that selection. So the one we're going to create is a drop down, and in that drop down they'll appear top to bottom by display order.
Right, Mark, sorry, mate. Could you just confirm then that you would like us to replicate that, add item people, then add
Yes.
the last
The first
thing?
option is people, and then I'll add the next 4, and I'll leave the screen up so that they're there for you to replicate. You have the option. Or in fact, I'll go back to the one that was used. So if we've added people already, if you'd like to add the next 4.
We can see that one underneath.
Oh, wow. Hello? Hello?
Hi, Bill.
Hello? Hi, so I've done, sorry, being a bit slow here, mate.
No,
People, and display order 10. Do I go to done and then add another item to the?
Yes,
You know,
you'd like to add items and add the next 4 in. So performance, process, product, and project.
So after I've added the first 3 fields, I click done and then add an item?
Yes. So you click done there, then it'll give the option to add new items.
And where's that list? Where's the list that you had? Where do
So
I
I'll
find
leave
that?
this one up on screen, and it'll just be running through these 5 options.
Yeah, but there's no list I can go to on the site that allows me to fill in those things. This is from your example, is it?
Yes, you'll be creating your own.
Performance, process, product, and project of what you invented there, is it? Right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's all.
You could say that.
What's the display order value on performance?
So what we would do here, if we leave it blank, it will default to order in the order we add, but we can fix the order. So if I add the display order for these options,
Phil, whilst Mark is doing that, a good example of where you might want to change the display order or fix it would be, for example, if somebody has to change choose the stage of a process, and let's say they're working on DMAIC, so they're a Six Sigma expert, they're working on projects which are using DMAIC, you actually do want DMAIC to appear in that order of the drop down. So sometimes by default, we tend to leave it blank. So it's just alphabetical, so they're easy to find. But if it's a particular acronym, then you want it in that order. So for the KT folk, for example, Sapper Dapper is always Sapper Dapper. It's not Passa Dapper, whatever else it might be. I need to save that and save the field. Tell them I'm watching them.
Okay, has everybody been able to add the select list options?
Really there, mate. Just give me some.
Yep, sure.
No.
How are you getting on, Bill?
A lightning speed, actually, Mark. I'm on the last one, no? Just on the last one. Which, from your calculations, project, isn't it? Yeah, so there we go.
Okay, so now we've done that, what we need to do is first save the select list. So clicking that tick, save the select list, and then you'll see the option selected here. Let me know if there are any issues with that. Okay. So we've created a select list. Now what we're choosing is how that's going to render, and there are a few different types of selection field. The one we want is select, which offers a drop down. Other options are, it could be a radio button, in which case all the options would appear on screen to the user, and they'll be able to select one of those 5 in the list. Checkbox and list box. Now we offer those. They're if you want to have multiple selection. Generally, if we can get away with a single selection, we would advise it, because reporting becomes quite difficult if you've got a field that's storing multiple values. In some cases, you do want it to be multi-select, but if it can be avoided and single selection is an option, we would advise to keep it single selection. The only other option on here that we need to worry about is the select list subtype. Now in this case it's text, but we have the option of text or numeric. We may want to select numeric if the options that we're selecting are then going to be used in an expression. So an example might be that you have your risk, you're setting your criticality and business impact, and each of those has a value between 1 and 5. You might want to store that numerically so you could then set a priority score based on logic off those 2 fields. So we've defined our,
So we're going for select and text, are we, Mark?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
I came out of the screen and I went back to the. I'm still on the App Studio page, but when I click on the fields, I can't find that my risk selection fields anymore. I thought I saved it, but does it mean I have to recreate it, or is it saved somewhere else in some other area?
So what may have happened there is when you create the select list,
yep.
when you click the tick, it comes up with a green banner at the top. That green
Yes.
banner is actually just for that select list. It's not for the field itself. So that green banner that you saw was that it's added the selection option. So if you go back into the field add screen and create the field again, what you should see in select list, if you click on the drop down, is that the selection list you created appears in this it appears as an option that you can pick from here.
Okay. Okay, all right, never mind. Thanks.
So if you'd like to replicate this field,
Looking at it now.
Five.
So we're waiting. I've done select and text and so forth. So we save it, or are we waiting now for the other fields to be filled in? Expression, default value.
So at this stage, that's all the properties we need for this field. If you click the tick, that will save the selection field.
Right.
And
Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
Yeah. Does anyone want me to wait a bit longer on that field, or are we ready to move it on?
Ready, move on.
Okay.
Ready, move on for me.
We've got 3 other fields to create. We've got the date, owner, and status. So the date field, create that next. We click the plus. We'll have the label as date, identifier as date. And then select the date field type. That's a slightly easier field there. Once we've got those 3 options, if you click the tick in the top right corner,
All 3 are date, are they? Without going back to anything? And then click tick it as OK, save it.
yeah, tick in the top right corner, and that will create the field.
Yeah. Okay.
Our next one is the owner. So we click the plus again to add a new field.
Yeah.
And for the owner, I've got this one as text. It's actually going to show you a slightly different field type. So if we get the label and the identifier as owner, and then from the field type, if you select the option that's person, and we'll see that when we view our app later, what the person field does is it creates a selection list, but uses an internal source for the options. And what it does is it pulls all of the users on the site into a list.
Right. So after person, tick save?
Yep. We tick that, we've got our owner. And the last field, we're going to add a status field. So if we click the plus again, get the add screen.
Mm-hmm.
Status and status for label and identifier.
Yeah.
Then the field type for this one, we're going to choose a multi-state. And multi-state offers a few different options. It can be either a red, amber, green, which come up as circles that you click through, and you click through the different colors. The one we've got here is an RAGBB. The 2 extra options are blue and black. Commonly, we'll use a red, amber, green, blue, black to say that blue would be if a project's on hold and black if it's closed. So it just allows for a couple of extra options. The other type of multi-state fields are Harvey balls. And they're the ones that they're a circle, but it's filled in on sort of a percentage of showing progress. So you'd start off with an empty circle. Then if you had a sort of a 5-state Harvey ball, it would then go to quarter full, half full, 3/4 full, and full. For this case, what we're going to do is do the status multi-state, and I would suggest the red, amber, green, blue, black. Once we've selected those, if you click the tick, we've then got our data entry points for this app.
Does whatever it is recognize RAGBB as something that's indicative that will pull out the right information? I mean, it's just saves writing it all out, but is RAG, just letters only okay, is it? Don't describe.
So that's the option. How it will render, if we go to the example of our app, is it will render like this, and you'd be able to click through the different colors.
Yeah. So just inputting the information as we have will be enough for that status to be recognized like that. Okay.
Yes.
So after multi-state type, it's save again?
Yep. And we've got all our fields. So has everybody now got 6 fields?
I hope so. Numbers right, but the content might be wrong. But yeah, thanks.
Yep, I've got 6 as well.
All right, brilliant. So now we've got our fields. The next stage is to determine what the layout of those fields is, so how they're going to appear. And looking at our built example, first step is to collect them onto a template. So risk profile is our template here. And we've got the fields as we want them, with some help information in there as well. So let's do that. Now, following the 8-step process, we've done 1 and 2. Step 3 is the templates. So we click on the templates folder in the left. And then to create a new template, we'll click the plus button. We need to give the template a title and identifier. The title is the header that's above the fields. So in this case, it's our risk profile. So if everyone wants to enter risk profile as the title, and that will also generate the ID. In this case, the ID will never be seen by the user. So you can have that as what you like, but obviously something logical is going to help you when you go back in and you have multiple templates that you've built. Now, the next section we find is quite important is to add help text. Now, the help text appears under that I button in the top right, and the type of help that we want here is process help. So where we've got our fields, it's anything in there that the user could be asking when they're filling in the form. If they get to the status and they don't know what red, amber, green, blue, black mean, in the help text, we can have the definitions. And it saves the user then having to go and source the information from somewhere else. So for now, if let's put in a few options here. So let's have status and say what the options are. Green might be on track. Amber, minor issues. Red could be requires attention.
Yeah.
Blue on hold. Black closed. Well, you can put your own definitions in there if you like.
Do you want us to do that now, Mark? Or?
Yeah, if you'd all like to get to that stage, and then we can move on to actually putting the fields into the template. So I'll give you a moment.
Hi, Mark.
Yeah, hiya.
Quick question.
Sure.
Is there a need to have like a separator between each? Like, for example, when you have green, on track, amber, do you need that comma separator, or you can just leave it as one line? How would it show up in your template when you render it?
So the help text can be any layout you like. So how it appears in here is how it would appear in the help area. If you like, you can actually add HTML tags if you wanted to. So I think long term, we'd probably change this to be a rich text field, which offers the options of color and sort of bold text. But I mean, if you wanted to, you could have status there in bold by adding HTML tags.
Okay.
The only question on that is just to be careful, because if you do sort of if you don't close something, it could affect the layout of the rest of the template.
Okay.
So it's just a case of being careful if adding that. But how it appears there is exactly how it will appear in this help section.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Now, the other option you'll see on that screen is the option to add a template icon. Now, we're not going to cover that in today's session. We'll cover it on another one. What it does is place an icon just next to the title here, and it just helps to break up the page where you've got multiple templates. But what we're going to do is, having filled that in, move on to the basic builder. The basic builder is how we're going to lay the fields out. To do that, we first click on Add Item, and what that will do is add a row that we can place fields into. So if we come to the template that's existing, we'll see that in our first row, we've got one field, and it's the title. We then come to our second row, and we've got the one field that's the description. So we add a new row, one column, set the description. And on our third row, we're placing the other four fields. So type, owner, date, and status. So we'd add a row, and in this case, we then change the number of columns to 4 and add type, owner, date, and status. So
Hi, Mark.
Yeah.
In the first row, first column, right? I don't think to see title.
Do you not see the title field?
No. It says date, description, owner underscore text, and then status underscore numeric, type underscore text.
So do you see an identifier that's S risk register?
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Got it. That's the ID that's been set for that field.
Okay, got it.
It'll still render as title on the app.
Mark, I'm sorry I was, again, a couple of steps back from where you are at the moment. I've finished the...
Sorry, Bill.
The descriptions in the text field, red, amber, green. Then you are going on to add these columns and so forth. So where do I go back to in order to start doing that?
On which one? To this screen? Did you save after doing the details?
Yeah.
So that's fine. That's created a template. What you need to do is, from the list of templates, if you click on the one that appears in that list.
So I go to add template, do I have something?
No, so if you go back, you'll be back on this page here, and you'll see risk profile. If you click on that, it'll open up that template that you've just created.
Okay, just hang on a second.
Really say and leave you on actually.
Yeah. Okay. So where do I go after I've done that then? Basic
so
builder.
Screen, you'll see the three options: the details, basic builder, and enhanced builder. If you click on the basic builder, that'll then give you the option to add your fields in.
So I add an item.
Yeah, that'll add the row. And then you select the number of columns and place the fields you want into those columns.
One column title.
Neil has
Has everybody got to this stage, or does anyone want some help?
Done.
Point two. Span and description.
So one thing you may notice as you're building this template is the mode is actually different for row 2. What the system does is it recognizes certain fields and chooses to span them across the whole page rather than sitting them in one column. So here we've got the title. Now that sits in one column, so it'll take up a quarter of the screen. The description is a long text, and because we know that the user's likely to enter a lot of information in there, what we'll actually do is span that field across the whole row.
So I'm in 2. I've got number of columns as 1. How do I get the mode to span? Sorry.
When you select description, it'll know that that field is a long text field, and so it'll set the mode for you.
Sorry, I'm going to go to look at your screen. So you're on 2, number of columns 1, mode is span. How do I get to that?
So the mode will be set as you select the description field. So if you place description in column 1, you should notice that the mode changes automatically.
I'm being thick here, mate. 2, row 2, number of columns 1. I'm in description. So, sorry, I'm in column 1. So I select what? Description, did you say? Or?
Yeah. So we select description there.
And that goes to span. Thank you. Place behind. Right, then it goes to add another item and whatever it was on yours. Let me see here.
Yes, if you add the last row, set the number of columns to 4.
4, okay.
You should be able to select. Okay, so if everyone gets to this screen, they then click the tick in the top right, that will then save their template. How you getting on, Bill? You ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazingly, Mark, I'm ready. I think all will be revealed when I publish it. No, that's the wrong way round. Okay.
So having saved it, I think because you had it opened it the second time, you need to click the back button to get back to the menu down here. So we've got our template. What we'll do with the template is sit that onto a form. There could be multiple forms. Forms will sit in this left pane menu, one below the others. So if we click to stage 4, and we click on the add screen, we'll add our form. So we're going to add our risk form. So enter risk as the title and the identifier. And it's our first form, so we'll give it a display order of 10. Now, the form is going to be a selection of the templates we've created. So we have one template, so what we'll do is add this to the form. So we'll click on Add Item. It's the first template that's going to appear, so we'll give it a display order of 10 and select the template Risk Profile. So if you'd like to do that now, and if everybody's got to this stage, if they then click the tick at the top right, they'll have created their form.
Click done first, or
It's optional. You can either click done or leave it open. I think generally I leave it open just because it's quicker, but you can click done. So if you click the tick up there, you should have your form created and be back on this screen here with the form appearing. Has everybody got to that stage?
Yep.
Brilliant.
Risk 10, yes. Okay, let me have a look. Yeah, that's what I've got on my screen. Okay, numerical. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So we've done the layout. We've actually created our web form. There's just one more thing we need to do before we're able to see it, and that's to create a report. The reason being, it's how we access the records. Now, as Andy mentioned earlier, we'll have a new version of App Studio coming out soon, which is likely to be able to let you preview it at this stage. But for now, we do actually have to have one report to be able to get to see our records. And that's because of the navigation. So when I come into my app, the page I land on is this one. And it's then from there that I can get to the add screen or the edit screen. So what we're going to do is create a list report, and we're going to replicate the one on this screen here. So we'll have the title, type owner, date and status, and we'll also have the description appearing in a section just below that's accessible via these chevrons. So if everybody clicks on reports on the left pane menu, and then clicks the plus button, we'll enter a title and an identifier. So this will be our risk register, which will then auto-populate the ID. And we've got the option of adding a subtitle if we wish to. Now the subtitle will appear above the list of records. So if I quickly go back to our example, if we add a subtitle, it would appear just next to this pencil here and appear in the line up here.
Mm-hmm.
So for the purpose of demoing, if you'd like to add something like, this is a list of all business risks. And if you'd like to do this one alongside me, I'll pause at moments, but there's a fair amount involved in the list report, so I think we'll do this one together. So if everyone wants to add those three options. And the next thing we'll do is pick the report type. So in this case, we're picking a list, which is going to list out the records. We've got a display order. Now it's going to be our first report, so we'll give it a display order of 10. Just to note, the display orders, we're setting them to sort of 10, 20, 30, 40. Reason being is in case we ever wanted to, say, add a report between two that already exist. If I'd ordered them 1, 2, 3, 4, it doesn't allow any leeway to then go back and reorder. Whereas if I've labeled them 10, 20, 30, I can put one in at display order 15 and it'll sit between the ones that are 10 and 20. We've got the report group. For this one, we'll leave report group off. What it does is, say we had an app where they did have around sort of 20 reports, you could then group them under the same heading, so they'd all sit under the title of, say, location reports, or you could group them together so that you don't have the long list. In this case, we'll leave that blank. We get some options. We've got default report. Default report means that this will be the report the user lands on every time they navigate to the app. You can do that if you want to force it. Generally leave it without a default report so that when it goes back in, it will land them on the same report that they last viewed when they access the app. So my advice would probably, unless you really want to force the user to land on this report every time they go in, to leave default report off. Hidden is purely if you want to hide the report for now, but you may want to use it later. It'll hide it from all users, but if it's one that you know you're going to use again in the future, you can keep the config. Allow multi-select is always advisable. It allows the user to select multiple records for bulk operations. So if they were to want to update security on 5 records at once, it just gives them the option of being able to select more than one record. The quick edit report, this option will go. It's a legacy feature that has been sort of superseded by a feature that we call inline edit. So now we don't need this option. All reports will be editable via this icon here. If they click on the pencil, it will put the report into an editable version, and they can update field values here. So we'll leave the property of quick edit. The two that I would advise adding are display attachments and display comments. Attachments and comments are information that's stored against a record, but not stored against the fields. So you can open a record and there's an attachments and comments area where you can upload files and add general comments. These are then accessible from the list reports. They haven't been enabled on this one, but they would appear as 2 columns on the right-hand side here, and you could see all activity for the record as well. So if everybody wants to fill in those options, are there any questions on any of those?
Yeah, I guess it's just remembering all the content that you just shared. It's good, but is that in the support thing in case we need to remind ourselves what those options are about?
Yes, it should be, and I will check, and if it's not, I'll add it.
Thanks.
I will double check that.
Do we save that now or wait until you've gone on to the...
No, if we keep going through, so if everybody's got to that stage, we've got the option here of adding a base filter. Now, a base filter is something that will always be applied to the report. If we wanted a report that just showed actions that were status red, we could base filter it down by adding a filter in here. And then for this report, it would only ever show anything that's status red. You can filter down on top of that, but it would only ever show the red items. We don't want that for this report, so we'll leave base filter blank. And then we need to add report fields and details fields. Now the report fields are the columns that appear in the report. So for this, we're going to add our 5 fields. So if we add items, and select the fields in the order that we want them. So we've got title, type, owner, and status. If you let me know when everybody's got to that stage, we can then add some of the other properties. Okay. So the display order. The display order is the order that the fields will appear left to right in the report. So the lowest display order will appear on this left side and the highest one across on the right. So we'll label these 10 to 50.
I've slipped behind again, Mark, but you carry on, mate.
That's fine, but
I wanted to get to the point. Display order, column priority. You started adding a number there, and I can't remember what you were doing. Chart, where are we?
So we've added our 5 fields. So we've got the title, type, owner, status, and
I got to report fields. Okay, so at report fields, then display order, column.
Add an item.
Right.
It should give you the options to add fields in. If you select the 5 fields as the parent fields, one for each item you add.
Yes, I've just added 5, and the parent fields will be what are it again? Is it a drop down list?
The title.
Yeah, and the next one is type.
The owner, the status, and the date.
Okay. Thank you.
So now we've added those 5, what we can do is set a display order on them. So the display order was left to right, lowest number to highest number. So we'll add them in the order we've got them. So if you put through the display orders as 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Then the other option we've got is the column priority. The column priority refers to which fields are going to appear based on the real estate of the screen. So if I were to shrink the screen, we've set a column priority that determines which fields appear first. So if there's only space for 4, these 4 will appear. And then as we get more room, it'll feed in the ones with lower column priority. So the status will be added. So under column priority, I would probably set the title as 1, the status as 2, maybe the owner as 3, date 4, and type 5. But you can set your own priorities on which field you think are most important. And then if you can let me know when you get to this stage, we'll add the description in after. Does anybody want more time on that? Okay.
1, 5, 3, 2, 4. Wait a minute.
Yes. So to add the description in the sort of details area via the chevron, we add that as a detail field. So on the option at the bottom, if we click add an item there, we can set the order that they're going to appear top to bottom. and then which field appears in there. So if we set the display order to 10 and the parent field as description, that'll complete the configuration of the report.
Just wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
What stage have you got to, Bill?
Just about to start what you're doing.
The details field. Okay.
Yeah. What's the order of the fields again? Title?
Title 10.
Yeah. Title and then type, is it?
Type 20. Oh, sorry, the order added. Title, type, owner, status, and date.
I was getting ahead of myself and I added another one. How do I get rid of the added field display order at the bottom?
Done. It will come up with a cross on the right hand side and you can remove it via that.
Okay. Now after that, sorry, what do I do after having done that? So I've got the display order.
So you've done the display order. Have you set the column priorities?
Yeah, 1, 5, 3, 2, and 4.
That's brilliant. Yep. That's all we need for the report fields.
Now what do I do?
Details fields, if you add one item there with a display order of 10 and pick description.
Display order 10 and pick description. Okay,
that's then complete. So if you click the tick in the top right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the app complete. So to prove it, if we go back to the workspace, so you'll either have that tab still open, or if you need to get back there, you can click the cog and go back to the workspace. What you should find is that in the workspace, you can find your app, click on it, and it'll open up your app. Does that work for everybody?
Publish, is it? No need to publish, is it? After reports, we straight away go to the app, is it?
If you go back to the workspace, what you might need to do is just refresh the browser in the workspace so that it reloads the latest config.
Oh, okay.
But you should see, I think Andy's recategorized them, so they should now all appear under the same category of app builder. And in this section, if you select your app, you should land on the report.
Hi, Mark. Could you share a sample of what it's supposed to look like? Because even if I view mine, I'm not sure if it's correct or not.
Yeah, sure. So if we pick... So
Mark, I don't see...
You should see this screen here. So to test that our apps work, what we're going to do is add a record. So from this screen, if you click the plus icon, enter one risk and click the tick, you should be able to save your first risk.
Okay.
Let me know.
For some reason, Mark, for some reason on mine, it missed description when I look at the...
You're not in the template. We can have a look. Andy's looking now.
Maybe I didn't save something when I should have done. I don't know. Title type owner, something status date. That's it. That's, well. Don't let me hold you
Bill,
back
it looks
now.
like your description comes up under if then.
Oh,
Just a different title that's on there. Just a different label for the field. So if everybody's been able to add that record, if they then hit the back button, they should see the record they've created in their list report. And if everybody's got to that stage, I'll hand back to Andy now. And he can walk through.
Mark?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got the icon show up. If I click on a plus, I can go to add in a record. But when I just click on the icon, it does not bring me to the report.
So from this screen, which was your app? Sorry, I'll try and access it. Let's have a look.
The one with the red icon.
Yeah.
On a bit. Yep.
So it should land you on this screen here when you go in.
Yeah. Right, but I'm not getting that though.
Try refreshing the browser.
Refresh. Okay.
It might, when you make a change in App Studio, it just needs a refresh on the workspace just to pull the latest config through.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Thanks.
And that looks perfect.
Very good.
So has anybody else got any questions at this stage? In that case, I think I'll hand back to Andy now and he can run you through what the next steps on the course are.
Great. Okay. Well, look, thanks very much, everybody. It's been really interesting following in the background, actually, as you've been building your applications, because you had already set them to publish so we could see them. I could actually track on a step-by-step basis as you were going along. And I think pretty much all 6 of you are at exactly the same place. You might find there's some differences in terms of layout or in terms of terminology or description, but that's absolutely fine. I think one of the things that we find when building an application is that let's get something out there. Let's get it out there quickly. The next step is to let's add some real data to the application and think about the user experience and then go back and modify it. So over the next week, as you go back into the application, if you want to change the field descriptions or just have a play with it, have a look at some of the other applications, then please do so. So let's, where do we go from here? One of the things that we're going to suggest as homework, our interim assignment, is to actually pick up on the risk register as the basic application, and let's go from risk 1 to risk 2. So in our solution, on the 2 applications we've built, if you go onto the Launchpad, you'll see there's an application called risk 1. And if we look at risk 1, you'll see that we've added a number of demonstration records. So these are just dummy records. And this starts to bring the report to life. You'll see that the records are grouped now. Now, to group things, you have the filter button in the top right-hand corner there. And grouping records can often bring a report to life, but you can also set filters and you can change the sort order. You'll see on the left-hand side, though, also that we've added a simple chart. Now, what we're going to suggest is that over the next week, in the hours assignment, that you do a couple of things. One is to go on to the support site and just read up about how do we create a bar chart. And it's just a variation on the list report that Mark told you earlier on. So that's one thing that we're going to suggest you do as homework, and then we can pick up on that in a week's time. The other thing is that let's have a look at a slightly more advanced risk application. So you'll see you'll see on the apps Incubator site, we've got another application called Risk 2. Now, Risk 2, you'll see, is slightly more sophisticated, but the only difference between what you've done in the last couple of hours and this application is that there are more fields and they're laid out in a slightly different order. So the second thing we're going to suggest is that you have a look at what we've done on Risk 2 and see if you can replicate it, see if you can work out what we've done in terms of the additional fields and in terms of producing the list report here where we're showing a different field type. So here we've got a range control and we've got a priority calculator here. And these are things that we will also pick up on the next session. So let me now just pop back to my PowerPoint slides and let's just pick up on where Mark has left off in terms of the first application. So let me just summarize then. So first of all, the bar chart, you'll see the information is available on the support site. So just type in bar chart and that will take you through to the help information for this. But in the PowerPoint pack that's also on the site, you can download this. You'll see that we've just provided the 7-step process. So you'll click to add a new chart. You'll add the title and subtitle as you did before. But now instead of selecting list, you select chart. Select the display order as 20, so it appears underneath your list report. You can select the chart type as a bar chart, but you'll see there are other types of chart there. You can then add your list report as the target click-through. So this means that if you click on the bar, it will then take you through to a list report, but with a filter applied just for those items that apply to that particular bar. And then to create this report, it's very simple. You just need to select 2 fields. And the 2 fields on a bar chart are what do you want to be your x-axis and what do you want to be your y-axis. So very quick and very straightforward, but have a look at the help information. But if you do need any support, then just send us an email or give us a call and we can just talk you through that. And just to say in the PowerPoint, again, it just points you at the Risk 2, so the more sophisticated risk application. And you'll see here that we've got additional fields. So we've added team, we've added financial impact in terms of expected best and worst case scenario, areas impacted. We've got a couple of range fields here. So these are interesting. And you'll see that these also calculate an overall priority value using probability times impact. You'll see there is an in-app chart, and we'll pick up on this in the next session. So this is one way in which you can bring applications to life. And you'll see that on the there is a second template here. So as well as the risk profile, we have the mitigation. And so we have a mitigation plan with 3 additional fields. You'll also see there's a new report type, and the Monte Carlo is based on the expected best and worst case scenario. So if you've got those 3 values, you can create a Monte Carlo profile of your risk register. And again, that's just another chart type. So as well as a bar chart, you've now got a Monte Carlo chart. And so long as you've got a number of records, 3 or 4 records with some valid data in, then that will give you your profile. Okay, so let's just summarize then in terms of over the next week, then what would be useful. One is to build the full risk register, that's risk 2, add a bar chart and add 5 demo records. For more information, the self-teach element, you've got support.softtools.net. And the other thing we're going to suggest you do is to add template help. But in fact, I think you've already done that. Mark's talked you through that. So you should already have that. Let me just point you at a couple of things. So Mark, you were suggesting there's a support.
Yes, if when you go away you've got questions as you're building your apps, the quickest way to get support is to send an email to our ticketing service. So if you email support@softools.net, that will then generate a ticket that one of our agents can pick up.
Okay.
And I think the final thing, again, just in terms of support, you do have the quick help button in the bottom right-hand corner here, and this will take you straight through to a relevant part of the support area. So just by typing in bar chart, you will see there are 3 results there. We can go into the bar chart, and again, the help information that you need is available right at your fingertips there. So either go in through the website, email us directly, or use the support widget in the bottom right-hand corner. Great. Okay. Well, look, that's pretty much it for this session. We're so well done to everybody. That's your first application built and fully deployed. This isn't a prototype. This is now running on a global system, so it's available to anybody that you would choose to give it to. Now, in the next session, we're going to pick up on some of the more advanced features. We'll be covering off some of the other elements in the configuration area, and we'll be starting to talk about things like expressions and building intelligence into your applications. But that's it for today. Any other final quick questions, thoughts, or concerns?
Yes, Andy, Jamil here.
Yes, hi, Jamil.
Just a quick question is, when you do a publish the first time,
yes,
and after that, subsequently, when you do make changes to the app, do you need to republish it again, or is just refresh is good?
No, at this point, you're making changes to the live system. So one of the options you have, if you can change take the application down by just not giving people access to the application, make changes. Then when you're happy, you can then open it up again. But no, you're making change on the live system. So as soon as you've done that, it will be live.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay.
What other questions? Any other quick questions from anybody?
Another one is in the overview, you have a checklist, app build checklist, and
Yes.
right now in this, for this, it shows as is the title field set, which is in red.
Okay.
Is it something that we deliberately left it out for future sessions, or?
Okay, that's something, again, we're going to pick up on the configuration area, some of the other areas we haven't talked about. But, but now you've got some fields on your system. If you want to complete that, if you go to the Configure tab and just scroll down till you get to the record title field, and then choose whichever field you want to use as the record title. And obviously in this example, because we have a field called title, then just select that one, hit the tick button, and then you will find that red status will turn green.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
No problem. Any other final questions?
Not about this, Andy. Can I call you in about 2 minutes on your mobile, please?
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. Or we'll pick up on Skype, whatever's easiest, Bill.
Yeah. Okay, mate. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the session. Thanks, Mark.
Great.
That's very good.
Okay. Well, look, thanks very much, everybody. And we'll see you next Tuesday, same time.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank
Thank
you.
Great. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.